Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As you can see, the title of today's chapter of the 48 Laws of Power is Court Attention at All Costs. Court attention at all costs. Now, I will give my weekly disclaimer that I do with this book, and that is number one, firstly and foremostly, we are Muslims. This book was written by a non-Muslim, an atheist at that. There will be a lot of, this is not divine revelation, it's the work of a man, a non-Muslim man, no less. So there will be a lot of problematic issues that we as Muslims will take issue with. One of them is seeking fame for its as an end goal in and of itself. And I'm going to read to you with the ahadith connected to it. Don't even ask, Vergator, machines, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Appreciate it. And I'm going to read to you the ahadith with regards to that. Secondly, and as I mention every single week, learn these lessons either to implement them yourselves, to benefit from them, which you can, or to avoid making the mistakes that so many of us make by making stupid blunders and errors, never outshine the master and things like this. Or thirdly, so that you can be aware of what other people, more conniving, foxy people, might be doing to you. One of the three. Either you can use it, or you can protect yourself from making stupid mistakes, or you can prevent yourself from making stupid mistakes, or you can protect yourself from it being used against you. So we will divide this chapter into two parts because it's divided into two parts. So we will cover it over 2 weeks. And I have a bit of a cough and a cold, so I apologize if that's coming, the feedback on the mic's coming a bit off. But we will get through this, inshallah. Judgment. Everything is judged by its appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing. Never let yourself get lost in the crowd then, or buried in oblivion. Stand out. Be conspicuous at all costs. Make yourself a magnet of attention by appearing larger, more colorful, more mysterious than the bland and timid masses. Now, before we continue, it is fitting and appropriate to begin with what does our religion say about this? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys real quick. Share screen. So the question was, I want to know the ruling on seeking fame in worldly matters, such as if people describe you as smart and as a genius, or you appear on TV screens and the like. I know that the individual will not be rewarded for that, but is this a sin or shirk even though it is a worldly matter? Similarly, if I am now famous and my aim is to become famous among people in this world, note emphasis on the word my aim, okay? If my aim is to become famous among the people in this world, can I change my intention and make my fame purely for the sake of Allah, despite the fact that it was not like that in the beginning? Can fame be regarded as simply a means of attaining permissible things if I use it for worldly purposes that are permissible, and if I add to it the intention of worship and growing close to Allah? This is a great example of literally trying to fit something in to the deen that just doesn't fit. You're trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? You're trying to smuggle it and force fit it into the deen, and it just doesn't fit. And if I can add to it the intention of this, that, the third, this guy's going on and on. The intention of worshiping and close to Allah, will it be turned into a righteous? Let me just, look, before I read to you the answer, let me say this. If you are seeking fame as a goal of yours is to seek fame, this is a problem. It's a big problem from a Shari'i standpoint. Now, this law that we're about to cover will encourage you to do so. But from a Shari'i standpoint, this is a big problem. Why? Because it will fall into riyah, showing off. Riyah is one of the minor forms of shirk, associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a problem. If your aim is to seek excellence in what you do, and one of the side effects of that is fame, so be it. So be it. And that tends to happen. When you are excellent at something, typically one of the side effects of being excellent at what you do is you gain notoriety. You become famous or infamous, whichever way. It doesn't matter. Regardless, you become known. It is what it is. That's fine. But if your end goal is fame, that's when it becomes a problem. All right. Tamam. The answer. Seeking fame is blameworthy in all circumstances. The believer should be modest and humble, and he should not like to be pointed out. One of the main factors that corrupts a person's effort to reach his Lord is his love of fame and prominence amongst people, and love of leadership over them. This is very important. Everyone wants to be a leader, right? If you desperately want to be a leader, you shouldn't be a leader. The best leaders are those who never wanted to be a leader in the first place. Who remembers Gladiator? Do you remember when Marcus Aurelius wanted to appoint Maximus as, I can't remember what the title was, but it was a temporary appointment of giving him full autonomy over Rome, total power over Rome, until the Senate could sort themselves out or something like that. Why? Because his son was incapable of doing so. His son was not fit for the job, and he knew it. Marcus Aurelius knew it. What was Maximus's response? I cannot. I don't want this responsibility. I don't want this responsibility. Real leaders understand the heavy burden of leadership, and they don't want it. They don't want it. If you are vying and chomping at the bit to become a leader, you shouldn't be a leader. It's not for you. You clearly do not truly respect the heaviness of this responsibility. Your innate reaction should be an aversion to it. You shouldn't want it. You should not want it. So it's an immediate red flag. If you want that, that's a red flag. It should be given to you simply as a result of you excelling in what you do. And you reluctantly take it on because there's no better man for the job than you. There's no better man for the job than you. And ultimately, someone's got to lead. It's got to be done. But to want it in and of itself as an end, this is a problem. Then we will read the hadith here. At-Tirmidhi 2376 narrated and classed as Sahih that Ka'b ibn Malik said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, 2 hungry wolves sent against a flock of sheep cannot cause more damage to them than a man's eagerness for wealth and prominence causes to his religious commitment. I will add the link in the description. You guys can read this in detail in the description, but for now, we will continue. Take whatever benefit you can from this chapter, and whatever you cannot benefit from a perspective of implementing in your daily lives, then at least soak it in so that you know what to avoid and what to protect yourself from the tools that other people might be using against you. Part 1. Surround your name with the sensational and scandalous. Draw attention to yourself by creating an unforgettable, even controversial image. Court scandal. Do anything to make yourself seem larger than life and shine more brightly than those around you. Make no distinction between kinds of attention. Notoriety of any sort will bring you power. Better to be slandered and attacked than ignored. There's a saying in the media. All attention is good attention. Never think, by the way, that, okay, when do you ever hear about Conor McGregor in the media? When do you ever hear about him? Conor McGregor. He punched this old man. He took a post of him drinking and saying, chilling in Jahannam. He threw a doddy through the bus. He on and on and on and on and on. On and on. Bad news after bad news after bad news after bad news after bad news. Conor McGregor is what? The most highly followed martial artist, not mixed martial artist on the planet. The most highly paid, the most highly paid martial artist, again, not mixed martial artist, including boxing, on the planet. Okay, Mayweather every now and again, he comes back and forwards and, he makes his big paydays. Aside from that, he's not really an active fighter. Conor McGregor, why? Because his colors shine so brightly. His personality is so bombastic. It's so wildly different. And I'm not saying it's right. Clearly it's not. It just is. You see, this is not about right and wrong. It just is. Notoriety of any sort will gain you power. And that is exactly what he has. He has the UFC eating at the palm of his hand. Maybe not as much right now, considering he's taken a couple of bad losses lately. But Up until then, he had them eating out of his hand. And even now, he's the biggest fish in the pond from a perspective of bums on seats. Bums on seats. It's him. He is the one who will put the most amount of bottoms on seats, which means the most amount of money that the UFC can make. Let's continue. Let me see. Should I read this? Observance of the law. P.T. Barnum, America's premier 19th century showman, started his career as an assistant to the owner of a circus, Aaron Turner. In 1836, the circus stopped in Annapolis, Maryland, for a series of performances. On the morning of opening day, Barnum took a stroll through town wearing a new black suit. People started to follow him. Someone in the gathering crowd shouted out that he was the Reverend Ephraim K. Avery, infamous as a man acquitted of the charge of murder but still believed guilty by most Americans. The angry mob tore off Barnum's suit and was ready to lynch him. After desperate appeals, Barnum finally convinced them to follow him to the circus where he could verify his identity. Once there, old Turner confirmed that this was all a practical joke. He himself had spread the rumor that Barnum was Avery, the guy acquitted of murder. The crowd dispersed, but Barnum, who had nearly been killed, was not amused. He wanted to know what could have induced his boss to play such a trick. "My dear Mr. Barnum," Turner replied, "it was all for our good. Remember, all we need to ensure success is notoriety." The UFC can say what the flip they like about Khabib jumping out the cage or about Conor McGregor throwing the dolly through the bus. All of that is gold, platinum marketing hype. Platinum. And they use that dolly of throwing that dolly through the bus. They juiced every single last drop out of that. Why? Fantastic marketing. It was a heinous crime. Somebody could have died from that. Someone could have had a career-ending injury from that. And yet they used it as marketing. Why? Because it creates hype, excitement, and ultimately that translates to what? Ticket sales. Bottom line, people are fickle. The mob, entertain them and they will pay you. They will pay you lots of money to entertain them. Entertain the mob. Remember, all we need to ensure success is notoriety. And indeed, everyone in town was talking about the joke. And the circus was packed that night, and every night it stayed in Annapolis. Barnum had learned a lesson he would never forget. Barnum's first big venture of his own was the American Museum, a collection of curiosities located in New York. One day, a beggar approached Barnum in the street. Instead of giving him money, Barnum decided to employ him. Taking him back to the museum, he gave him 5 bricks and told him to make a slow circuit of several blocks. At certain points, he was to lay down a brick on the sidewalk, always keeping 1 brick in hand. On the return journey, he was to replace each brick on the street with the one he held. Meanwhile, he was to remain serious of countenance and to answer no questions. Pay attention. Once back at the museum, he was to enter, walk around inside, and then leave through the back door and make the same bricklaying circuit again. On the man's first walk through the streets, several hundred people watched his mysterious movements. By his 4th circuit, onlookers swarmed around him, debating what he was doing. Every time he entered the museum, he was followed by people who bought tickets to keep watching him. The mob want to be entertained. And when they saw this strange spectacle, it acted as a diversion from their boring ass lives. I wonder what he's doing. What's going on here? Let me buy a ticket and find out. By his 4th circuit, onlookers swarmed around him, debating what he was doing. Every time he entered the museum, he was followed by people who bought tickets to keep watching him. Many of them were distracted by the museum's collections and stayed inside. By the end of the first day, the brickman had drawn over 1,000 people into the museum. A few days later, the police ordered him to cease and desist from his walks. The crowds were blocking traffic. The bricklaying stopped, but thousands of New Yorkers had entered the museum, and many of those had become P.T. Barnum converts. Barnum would put a band of musicians on a balcony overlooking the street, beneath a huge banner proclaiming free music for the millions. What generosity, New Yorkers thought, and they flocked to hear the free concerts. But Barnum took pains to hire the worst, not the best, the worst musicians he could find. And soon after the band struck up, people would hurry to buy tickets to the museum, where they would be out of earshot of the band's noise and of the booing of the crowd. Boy. One of the first oddities Barnum toured around the country was Joyce Heth, a woman he claimed was 161 years old and whom he advertised as a slave who had once been George Washington's nurse. After several months, the crowds began to dwindle, so Barnum sent an anonymous letter to the papers, claiming that Heth was a clever fraud. Joyce Heth, he wrote, is not a human being, but an automaton made up of whalebone, India rubber, and numberless springs. Those who had not bothered to see her before were immediately curious, and those who had already seen her paid to see her again, to find out whether the rumor that she was a robot was true. You know what this reminds me of? They paid to see her again. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of two boxers come together and they fight. One of them wins. But then they decide that they need to have a rematch. Why? Sometimes it's totally unobvious why. It was such a clear victory that you want to have a rematch. Usually they say, oh, it was close. Oh, it was this. Oh, but if that didn't happen, then this would have been different. Reminds me of when Fury first beat Wilder. What was Wilder's excuse? The robot suit that I was wearing was too heavy and it made my legs tired. So although Fury knocked him out, the message that was circulating amongst the mob was, oh, but Wilder would have won if his legs weren't tired from walking out with that suit. BS. Absolute.
This is number one bullshit.
Absolute BS. Nevertheless, people bought it. And as a result, they paid all over again to watch Fury Wilder 3. The mob. Fickle. Entertain them, and they will pay you handsomely. Oh, God. By the way, Fury, sick fighter. Absolute masterclass he put on last night. Flipping heart of a lion when it comes to fighting anyway. Let's carry on. In 1842, Barnum purchased the carcass of what was purported to be a mermaid. This creature resembled a monkey with the body of a fish, but the head and body were perfectly joined. It was truly a wonder. After some research, Barnum discovered that the creature had been expertly put together in Japan, where the hoax had caused quite a stir. He nevertheless planted articles in newspapers around the country, claiming the capture of a mermaid in the Fiji Islands. He also sent the papers woodcut prints of paintings showing mermaids. By the time he showed the specimen in his museum, a national debate had been sparked over the existence of these mythical creatures. A few months before Barnum's campaign, no one had cared or even known about mermaids. Now, everyone was talking about them, as if they were real. Crowds flocked in a record numbers to see the Fiji mermaid and to hear debates on the subject. A few years later, Barnum toured Europe with General Tom Thumb, a 5-year-old dwarf from Connecticut, whom Barnum claimed was an 11-year-old English boy, and whom he had trained to do many remarkable acts. During this tour, Barnum's name attracted such attention that Queen Victoria herself, that paragon of sobriety, requested a private audience with him and his talented dwarf at Buckingham Palace. The English press may have ridiculed Barnum. Focus now. They ridiculed him. But Victoria was royally entertained by him and respected him ever after. Now, What's the point I'm alluding here to now? Why did I emphasize the word ridicule? Conor McGregor is ridiculed by a great number of people. He is also loved by a great number of people. That's the nature of courting attention at all costs, or taking a polarizing stance. Let's call it that. When you take a polarizing stance, you're going to court attention whether you like it or not. There's no better example than the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's a polarizing figure. Absolutely. Some love him and some hate him. Facts. That Lars Vixen. La'natullahi alayhi, mashallah. See what happened to him the other day? The one who made all of those drawings of the Prophet ﷺ, those mockery drawings, cooked like a roast chicken in his car for 3 hours, I heard. And that's just the beginning. Some love him, some hate him. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Such is the nature of taking a polarizing position. It is what it is. Some do it for the better, such as the Messenger of Allah, the best cause, and some for Khara, Conor McGregor. Bottom line is, it works. And it caught us attention as a result. That is the consequence of swimming upstream. Let's call it that, swimming upstream. For better or for worse is irrelevant. What's relevant is that it works. Let me just see if this is, because I need to figure out whether this is relevant to you guys. There are bits in red. I don't read them all to you because some of them I just feel are not too relevant. No. Let's carry on. Interpretation. Barnum understood the fundamental truth about attracting attention. Once people's eyes are on you, you have a special legitimacy. For Barnum, creating interest means creating a crowd. As he later wrote, every crowd has a silver lining, and crowds tend to act in conjunction. If one person stops to see your beggarman laying bricks in the street, more will do the same. You want to know where you can see this play out? I'll prove it to you. There is no more common place that this plays out than on the bleeding motorway when someone has an accident. Have you ever been on the motorway and you get caught in a traffic jam? And by the way, if you're just coming in, please hit the like, barakallahu fikum. Hit the like in the video. If you've ever driven on the motorway and got caught in a traffic jam, you will notice so often that the moment you pass the site of the accident itself, miraculously, magically, the traffic opens up again. And I'm talking about not when the car is still on the road, in which case it would be considered a bottleneck. I'm talking about when the car is on the flipping hard shoulder. It's not actually in the way anymore. But people still stop to slow down. Why? Just to see. People are curious. Like, what happened there? Something different. People are curious. And we especially love to slow down to watch something some type of destruction, something destructive. Did you ever see people slow down to watch a beautiful sunset? Or to admire the beautiful breeze and trees and birds in the sky? No, you never saw that. You never saw a traffic jam for that. But you will always see a traffic jam for people slowing down to see who had an accident. Why? Because that's how our survival mechanism. We are built to seek out danger, even if it's just to look at it from a distance. Anyway, we digress. Let's continue. For Barnum, creating interest meant creating a crowd. As he later wrote, every crowd has a silver lining, and crowds tend to act in conjunction. If one person, we've read that. So crowds tend to follow each other. They will gather like dust bunnies. Then, given a gentle push, they will enter your museum, or watch your show, or pay to watch you fight and lose. But you still get paid. Conor McGregor had a brilliant tweet out actually a few months back. He was absolutely right. He said, 1 week they love you, next week they hate you. Just make you get paid on both weeks. Amen to that. To create a crowd, you have to do something different and odd. Any kind of curiosity will serve the purpose, for crowds are magnetically attracted by the unusual and inexplicable. And once you have their attention, never let it go. If it veers towards other people, it does so at your expense. Hence why news stations are constantly vying for your attention. For those of you who watch the news, I caution you. I caution you, for those of you who watch the news, be careful of how much of the news you watch and absorb. Why? Okay. Do you think the news are putting the news out for your benefit as some type of charity? MashaAllah, altruistic purposes. They really want to genuinely inform you. No, it's a business. Nothing wrong with that. It is what it is, but it is a business. And the business of bad news is more profitable than the business of good news. Let me say that one more time for those who missed it at the back. The business of bad news is more profitable than the business of good news. Facts. So feed the mob as much bad news as possible because that's what will hold their attention. Just as you will slow down to see that car who had an accident, who's on the hard shoulder, but you will never slow down on the motorway to watch a beautiful sunset. Bad news is the car accident. Good news is the sunset. They add it as a trickle in the end of the 6 o'clock news. Like, mashallah, something happened. Alhamdulillah. That's it. First 25 minutes of that half an hour slot, bad news. All bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news. So remember that, because your attention is monetized by news stations. They make their money through advertisers. No different to Facebook, Google, etc. If they can hold your attention longer, advertising companies will be more willing to pay higher prices to advertise their products. Adverts. That's how news stations make their money. So don't get it twisted. Don't believe everything you see on the news. Now, I've changed my stance about the news, especially more recently. I used to not watch any news at all. But particularly since I've been getting involved in different areas of my work, it has been important for me to be up to date on certain elements of the news, particularly geopolitics. But still, I take it with a pinch of salt. Like, I was watching the news the other day and I had to hear all this crap about the Taliban. I was like, shut the hell up, honestly, please. You understand? So you still have to be careful. So I'm not saying do not watch it completely and disconnect yourself completely from it, but put a filter on it. Take what you need and get rid of the rest. Maybe put some type of filter on your news feeds online where it filters out just what you're looking for, just what you need. The rest of the crap, masalama, goodbye. Okay. If it veers towards other people, it does so at your expense. Hence why news stations will always have bombastic stories, because that's how they keep your attention. And if they don't keep your attention will go elsewhere to the next station who has a more bombastic story than yours. Barnum would ruthlessly suck attention from his competitors, knowing what a valuable commodity it is. At the beginning of your rise to the top, then, spend all your energy on attracting attention. Most important, the quality of the attention is irrelevant. No matter how badly his shows were reviewed or how slanderously personal were the attacks on his hoaxes, Barnum would never complain. If a newspaper critic reviled him, particularly badly, in fact, he made sure to invite the man to an opening and to give him the best seat in the house. He would even write anonymous attacks on his own work just to keep his name in the papers. From Barnum's vantage, attention, whether negative or positive, was the main ingredient of his success. Shukran, Akhi Abu Ahmed. I appreciate it. Ameen. The worst fate in the world for a man who yearns fame, glory, and of course power is to be ignored. Now, if you're just joining this now, you need to refer back to the beginning of this live and spend a few minutes where I talk about the permissibility of seeking fame as an end in and of itself. It is impermissible and extremely harmful and dangerous. So please, if you're just joining now, make sure you go back to the beginning at the end of this. However, we're going over this law, and just because it is wrong doesn't mean it doesn't work. It does work. Do you understand? But seeking fame in and of itself is a destructive aim. You should be seeking excellence. And as a result of your excellence, one of the side effects of that is fame. Okay? If the courtier happens to engage in arms in some public spectacle, such as jousting, he will ensure that the horse he has is beautifully caparisoned, that he himself is suitably attired with appropriate mottos and ingenious devices to attract the eyes of the onlookers in his direction as surely as the lodestone attracts iron. If you've ever been to a football match or even a boxing match for that matter, you'll notice that there's lots of funky lights and sounds and music, and then they've got ring girls. Why? Why? I'm saying boxing now because Fury and Wilder fought last night, right? Why? Why all the lights and sounds and music and entertainment and naked girls, and for what? Why? Because it's a spectacle. Entertain the mob. Entertain them. And they will love you for it. And they will pay you for it. Marketers know this. Businessmen know this. And they take full advantage of it. They monetize your fickle attention. As you can see, I have a disdain towards it. I have a great disdain for it. But it's the truth. It is what it is. Keys to power. Burning more brightly than those around you is a skill that no one is born with. You have to learn to attract attention. As surely as the lodestone attracts iron, as Baldassar Castiglione said. At the start of your career, you must attach your name and reputation to a quality, an image that sets you apart from other people. This image can be something like a characteristic style of dress or a personality quirk that amuses people and gets talked about. This image can be something like, once the image is established, you have an appearance, a place in the sky for your star. It is a common mistake to imagine that this peculiar appearance of yours should not be controversial, that to be attacked is somehow bad. Nothing could be further from the truth. To avoid being a flash in the pan and having your notoriety eclipsed by another, you must not discriminate between different types of attention. In the end, every kind will work in your favor. Barnum, we have seen, welcomed personal attacks and felt no need to defend himself. He deliberately courted the image of being a humbug. Why? Because they're talking about him. That's all that mattered. That is all that mattered. The court of Louis XIV contained many... Guys, what's XIV? Let me know, please, in the comments. What number is that? The court of Louis XIV contained many talented writers, artists, great beauties, and men and women of impeccable virtue. But no one was more talked about than the singular Duke de Lauzun. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. I don't even know if it's French. The Duke was short, almost dwarfish, and he was prone to the most insolent kinds of behavior. He slept with the king's mistress and openly insulted not only other courtiers, but the king himself. Louis, however, was so beguiled by the duke's eccentricities that he could not bear his absence from the court. It was simple. The strangeness of the duke's character attracted attention. It broke the monotony of everyday life. He stuck out, and people were intrigued by it. We are all so desperate to fit in and be like everyone else that we think we don't. Can you guys hear me? Oh, you hear clicks. Let me know in the comments if you can hear. Please, I've disconnected the mic. Let me know if yes, sound is there. Okay. Right. I've disconnected the mic. I don't know what's happened to the mic. I'll figure it out afterwards. It might be a different sound now because it's the internal mic of the computer. But bear with me, inshallah. Right. Society craves larger than life figures, people who stand above the general mediocrity. Never be afraid then of the qualities that set you apart and draw attention to you. Court controversy, even scandal. It is better to be attacked, even slandered, than ignored. All professions are ruled by this law, and all professionals must have a bit of the showman about them. The great scientist Thomas Edison knew that to raise money, he had to remain in the public eye at any cost. Almost as important to the inventions themselves was how he presented them to the public and courted attention. This is very important for those of you marketers or those of you small business owners, entrepreneurs who are trying to launch a new product. Understand the features and benefits of your product are not enough alone to convince the mob to buy it, to buy them. You need to have some type of showmanship about you, some type of, think Richard Branson. He always has a bombastic fanfare whenever he launches a new business. Why? That's how you attract the attention of the mob, especially in today's day and age when our attention is being bombarded left and right. Left and right. Edison would design visually dazzling experiments to display his discoveries with electricity. He would talk of future inventions that seemed fantastic at the time. Robots, machines that could photograph thought, that he had no intention of wasting his energy on, but made the public talk about him. He did everything he could to make sure that he received more attention than his great rival, Nikola Tesla. For those of you who wondered where the name Tesla comes from, Tesla cars, it's from Nikola Tesla, who is the true founder of the electricity that we use today. AC current, is it the AC or DC? I think it's AC current, alternative current electricity, yes. You know, I can't remember, it might be AC or DC. Nikola Tesla invented the electricity type that is the most powerful one. We use it still to this day, and I cannot remember if it's AC or DC. Someone let me know in the comments. Who may actually have been more brilliant than he was, but whose name was far less known. How many of you have even heard of Nikola Tesla? In 1915, it was rumored that Edison and Tesla would be joint recipients of that year's Nobel Prize in Physics. The prize was eventually given to a pair. Where are we? Can you guys still hear me? Yes, you can. Off the XIV, it cut out. All right, guys. All right, I don't know how much you missed, but we're here now. The prize was eventually given to a pair of English physicists. Only later, it was discovered that the prize committee had actually approached Edison, but he had turned them down, refusing to share the prize with Tesla. By that time, his fame was more secure than Tesla's, and he thought it better to refuse the honor than to allow his rival the attention that would have come from sharing the prize. Halo effect. The fame attached to Edison's name would have transferred, would have diffused over to Tesla simply by associating his name with Tesla's in receiving this award. It's called the halo effect. If you find yourself in a lowly position that offers little opportunity for you to draw it, okay, before I get to that, I'll explain to you the halo effect. Why do you think Habib was here last week, right, in the UK? You must have seen a whole bunch of your friends putting photos up on social media online of taking a picture with Habib. And poor man looked miserable. Why do you think people do that? Why do you think people want to take pictures and be seen with other famous people? Why? Think why? For what? Because then that person gets to say, I met Habib. It was never about Habib. It's never about the celebrities. It's about the person himself or herself. It was never about the celebrity. It was about that person. Why? Halo effect. The fame and notoriety of that individual cross-transfers in a small way to the individual who had a photo with him. I met Habib. Oh, wow, you met Habib. Yo, that's a big man thing. The guy's like, yeah, man, I met him, innit? I met him. Honey, I met him, innit? Fact of life. I'm not criticizing it, by the way. I'm just saying that's why people do it. And that's why Thomas Edison refused to share that prize with Nikola Tesla, because that's what would have happened. The fame of Edison's name would have diffused in some small way to Nikola Tesla himself, which is the last thing that he wanted. If you find yourself in a lowly position that offers little opportunity for you to draw attention, an effective trick is to attack the most visible, most famous, most powerful person you can find. When Pietro Aretino, a young Roman servant boy of the early 16th century, wanted to get attention as a writer of verses, he decided to publish a series of satirical poems ridiculing the Pope and his affection for a pet elephant. The attack put Aretino in the public eye immediately. A slanderous attack on a person in a position of power would have a similar effect. Remember, however, to use such tactics sparingly after you have the public's attention, when the act can wear thin. Once in the limelight, you must constantly renew it by adapting and varying your method of courting attention. If you don't, the public will grow tired, will take you for granted, will move on to a newer star. The game requires constant vigilance and creativity. Pablo Picasso never allowed himself to fade in the background. If his name became too attached to a particular style, he would deliberately upset the public with a new series of paintings that went against all expectations. Better to create something ugly and disturbing, he believed, than to let viewers grow too familiar with his work. People feel superior to the person whose actions they can predict. Let me say that again. People feel superior to the person whose actions they feel can predict. If you show them who is in control by playing against their expectations, you both gain their respect and tighten your hold on their fleeting attention. Have you ever met that guy who seems to be so soft and nice and, just laid back, relaxed, and then you have a disagreement with him one day and this lion comes out of him? And you're like, where the flip? That came out of nowhere. It's an absolute shock. It's an absolute shock. Why is it a shock? Because you didn't expect it. You didn't expect it. And you tend to find, by the way, the most masculine, dominant men are, for the most part, laid back and just relaxed in most situations. Look at Habib when he's talking to me. He's like, just relax, easy, happy-go-lucky. The moment you grate against him, he'll take your head off in an instant. And it's all the more shocking because it plays against your expectation. You see, you would never have expected it from someone who seems so nice all the time. He's just so nice. Where did this come from? Like, that shock factor puts fear into the hearts of people. And you need to have a bit of that in you. You need to have a bit of that in your personality. You're nice for the most part. No problem. Alhamdulillah, we're nice. Cross the line and I'll take your soul. That spice there keeps people on edge, prevents them from being able to predict you or your actions, and therefore they will forever hold you in high regard, and you will have their respect. If you show them who is in control by playing against their expectations, you both gain their respect and tighten your hold on their fleeting attention. Image, the limelight. The actor who steps into this brilliant light attains a heightened presence. All eyes are on him. There is room for only one actor at a time in the limelight's narrow beam. Do whatever it takes to make yourself its focus. Make your gestures so large, so amusing, so scandalous that the light stays on you whilst the other actors are left in the shadows. Authority. Be ostentatious and be seen. What is not seen is as though it did not exist. It was light that first caused all creation to shine forth. Display fills up many blanks, covers up deficiencies, and gives everything a second life, especially when it is backed by genuine merit. What's the prerequisite? You have to have genuine merit. You must be genuinely good at what you do. But being genuinely good at what you do is not enough. You have to have a bit of the showman about you. That's how you actually gain the attention of the people for what it is that you do. But remember, refer to the beginning of this live so that you can put this in synchrony with our deen. Tamam. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you for you guys. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you've enjoyed this, and inshallah ta'ala, we will be resuming our normal schedule this week. I'm not going to tell you when, just hit the notifications bell, and once I go live, you will see me inshallah. Barakallahu feekum, salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Hit that like on your way out.